The Stoics believed that a human life is shaped not only by the decisions we consciously make, but by the people we allow close enough to influence our thinking. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As emperor, he faced enemies, disease, betrayal, and constant political pressure. Yet again and again his private warnings were not directed outward, but inward. He reminded himself that the true danger was proximity to the wrong influences. He wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and he knew those thoughts were rarely formed in isolation. Long before modern psychology named it, the Stoics understood emotional contagion. They observed that human beings unconsciously absorb the emotional tone, habits, and attitudes of those around them. You do not need to agree with someone to be shaped by them. You only need to tolerate their presence long enough for their patterns to become familiar. This is why Stoicism was never about withdrawal from society, but about discernment within it. It was not walls the Stoics built, but filters. We live in an age where attention is constantly under siege, not by armies or empires, but by noise. Opinions, outrage, urgency, and endless stimulation compete for space in the mind. The Stoics understood something timeless, that your peace is not destroyed by events themselves, but by how much access you grant them to your inner world. And often, it isn't events that destabilize us most, it's people. This video is about the 6 kinds of people who quietly erode your calm, your clarity, and your discipline. Not villains in the dramatic sense, but archetypes that appear again and again across history and human behavior. The Stoics didn't name them as such, but they observed them closely. They warned that proximity to certain dispositions shapes the soul over time, just as surely as water shapes stone. To master yourself, you must first understand what threatens your inner stability. And the first, most common and most destructive archetype is what we might call the chaos merchant. The chaos merchant is not necessarily malicious. In fact, they often believe they are informed, passionate, or simply realistic. But wherever they go, disorder follows. Their conversations revolve around crises, scandals, threats, and imagined catastrophes. There is always something urgent, something alarming, something wrong. Their minds are tuned to volatility, and they broadcast it relentlessly. Marcus Aurelius encountered these people daily, in the Roman court, among generals, senators, and advisors who thrived on fear and instability. He reminded himself that such people exist by necessity of nature, but that does not mean he must internalize their turmoil. He wrote, "Begin the morning by saying to yourself, 'Today I shall meet busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial.'" This was not cynicism, it was preparation. The chaos merchant feeds on reaction. Psychologically, they are driven by heightened threat perception. Modern psychology would describe this as a nervous system locked into fight or flight, constantly scanning for danger. The problem is not that danger never exists. It's that the chaos merchant cannot distinguish between what matters and what merely excites the mind. Everything becomes an emergency. Everything demands emotional engagement. The Stoics understood that a mind exposed to constant alarm cannot remain rational. Epictetus warned that if you allow external noise to dominate your attention, then you surrender your freedom. If you want to be invincible, he said, make sure that nothing outside your own will can disturb you. The chaos merchant is dangerous precisely because they invite disturbance disguised as information. Spend enough time around such a person, and your own mind begins to mirror their restlessness. Your thoughts accelerate, your patience shortens, your sense of proportion collapses. You begin reacting instead of choosing. This is not weakness, it is conditioning. The Stoics knew that emotional states spread socially long before neuroscience confirmed emotional contagion. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to recognize this pattern early. When rumors of rebellion, betrayal, or disaster reached him, he practiced deliberate mental distancing, not denial, but discernment. He would ask whether the information required action or merely stirred emotion. If it did not demand virtuous action, he refused to let it take residence in his mind. The Stoic response to the chaos merchant is not argument. Arguing feeds the chaos, nor is it contempt. Contempt still binds you emotionally. The response is calm disengagement and selective attention. You listen only for what is actionable, and you let the rest pass like wind through a high wall. This is why Stoicism places such emphasis on the idea of the inner citadel, a mental space no external noise can breach without permission. The chaos merchant can shout, speculate, and dramatize endlessly, but only you decide whether the gates open. To master yourself in a chaotic world, you must first recognize who profits from your agitation. And once you see the chaos merchant clearly, their power over you begins to dissolve. The second archetype that the Stoics warned against is far quieter, and for that reason far more seductive. This person does not arrive with chaos or confrontation, but with sympathy. They speak the language of injustice, bad luck, and unfairness. Life, to them, is something that happens rather than something that is shaped. They are the kind of person who always has a reason, always has an explanation, and never has responsibility. To the Stoics, this mindset was not merely unfortunate, it was corrosive. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea repeatedly in his private writings, warning himself not to surrender his agency. He reminded himself that suffering is often prolonged not by events, but by interpretation. When he wrote that you can discard your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears, he was not denying pain. He was defending power. He understood that the moment you frame yourself as a passive victim, you hand control to forces outside yourself. In ancient Rome, this attitude was common in times of decline. Citizens blamed corrupt officials, invading tribes, or the gods themselves, while refusing to examine their own conduct. Philosophers observed that empires rarely collapse from a single blow. They decay through learned helplessness, through the slow erosion of responsibility at every level of society. The Stoics saw this pattern not only in politics, but in individuals. Epictetus was uncompromising on this point. As someone who had been enslaved, beaten, and physically crippled, he had every reason to adopt the language of victimhood. Instead, he rejected it entirely. He taught that while you may not control what happens to you, you always control how you respond. To surrender that response is to surrender your freedom. This is why he warned his students to be cautious around those who constantly complain, but never act. Such people are not merely expressing pain, they are rehearsing powerlessness. Modern psychology echoes this insight through the concept of learned helplessness. When a person repeatedly explains failure as unavoidable and external, their brain eventually stops searching for solutions. What begins as explanation becomes identity. Over time, this mindset spreads to those nearby. Conversations become rituals of complaint. Energy drains away. Action feels pointless. The future feels closed. Marcus Aurelius guarded himself fiercely against this way of thinking. Even as plagues swept through Rome and wars consumed his reign, he refused to frame himself as unlucky or cursed. He wrote that obstacles become the way forward, not by magic, but by engagement. Every difficulty was to be met with reasoned effort, not emotional surrender. This was not optimism, it was discipline. The danger of remaining close to habitual victimhood is subtle. You begin by listening, then you begin agreeing. Eventually you begin excusing yourself in the same language. The Stoics believed this was how character erodes, not through dramatic moral collapse, but through repeated small abdications of responsibility. When you absorb the habit of explanation without action, you quietly relinquish agency. Stoicism does not demand cruelty toward those who suffer. Compassion is central to the philosophy. But compassion does not mean adopting another person's worldview. The Stoic helps without drowning. They listen without surrendering their frame. They refuse to join narratives that deny human agency, even when those narratives are emotionally persuasive. Seneca warned that constant complaint creates the illusion of depth while producing no change. He believed it was better to struggle silently toward improvement than to bond publicly over shared resentment. For the Stoics, dignity lay not in how loudly one protested fate, but in how steadily one worked within it. This is why they kept distance from those who endlessly rehearsed their misfortune, not because such people were weak, but because the mindset itself is contagious. When responsibility disappears from language, it soon disappears from behavior. And once behavior collapses, character follows. To remain stoic in the presence of victimhood is to refuse participation without hostility. It is to model responsibility rather than preach it. It is to remember, as Marcus Aurelius did, that your life is shaped not by what happens, but by how you choose to meet it. This second archetype does not shout or destabilize. It whispers, and if left unchecked, it teaches you to forget your own strength. The third type of person the Stoics warned us about is more subtle, more dangerous, and often far harder to recognize. This is not the loud critic or the obvious manipulator. This is the emotional parasite, the person who feeds on chaos, negativity, and drama, and slowly drains your inner strength without ever appearing openly hostile. Marcus Aurelius spoke often about guarding the mind from corruption, and this archetype is a direct threat to that discipline. These people are perpetually surrounded by problems, conflicts, injustices, and emotional storms. Wherever they go, something is always wrong. Someone has wronged them. Life has been unfair. Nothing is ever stable for long. At first, they appear vulnerable. You feel compassion for them. You listen. You support. You try to help. But over time, you begin to notice a pattern. The problems never resolve. The drama never ends. And the moment peace appears, they unconsciously, or sometimes consciously, create disorder again. The Stoics understood this pattern well. Epictetus warned that if you spend your time among people who complain constantly, you will slowly adopt their worldview without realizing it. The mind, he said, is impressionable. It absorbs what it repeatedly encounters. Just as smoke darkens walls over time, constant exposure to emotional chaos stains the soul. History offers countless examples of this archetype. In the courts of ancient Rome, political figures were often surrounded by courtiers who thrived on intrigue, gossip, and emotional manipulation. These individuals rarely wielded formal power, but they exerted enormous influence by destabilizing others. They whispered doubts, magnified fears, and kept leaders mentally exhausted. A tired mind is easy to control. Marcus Aurelius himself alluded to this when he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you allow your mental environment to be dominated by turmoil, resentment, and emotional excess, your inner world will eventually reflect it. The emotional parasite does not attack your values directly. Instead, they exhaust your capacity to live by them. They drain your patience. They erode your calm. They pull you into endless emotional conversations that lead nowhere. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your discipline weakens. What makes this archetype especially dangerous is that disengaging from them can feel cruel. The Stoics, however, were not advocates of emotional cruelty, but they were ruthless about protecting the mind. Seneca made this clear when he warned that we must choose our associations carefully, not because others are evil, but because weakness is contagious. To deal with this type of person, Stoicism does not recommend confrontation or emotional entanglement. It recommends boundaries. Internal first, external second. You do not need to argue with their chaos. You do not need to fix their lives. You simply refuse to let their storms become your climate. Marcus Aurelius advised responding to disturbance with calm detachment, not indifference, but mastery. You remain polite, you remain measured, but you no longer give unlimited access to your emotional energy. You limit exposure, you shorten conversations, you do not indulge endless negativity. This is not selfishness, it is self-command. The Stoics believed that your primary duty is to maintain a well-governed inner citadel. Once that collapses, you are no longer useful to anyone, not even yourself. Emotional parasites collapse that citadel brick by brick, not through force, but through fatigue. True strength, then, lies not in saving everyone, but in knowing who you must not allow to drain you. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And sometimes, the greatest act of strength is quietly stepping away. The fourth archetype is perhaps the most insidious, because it hides behind the guise of morality and convenience. This is the person who appears principled until principles become inconvenient. They speak of honesty, loyalty, and integrity, yet when pressure arrives, they bend, excuse, or justify actions that compromise character. Their compromises are small at first, almost imperceptible, but over time they create a pattern, a quiet corrosion of the standards around them. Marcus Aurelius knew such people well. In the court of Rome, even among those closest to him, there were individuals whose words spoke of virtue, while their actions betrayed expediency. He wrote repeatedly about the importance of aligning action with principle, warning himself that the mind must not be deceived by appearances. Be one person, both in public and in private, he reminded himself, recognizing that character is only real when consistent and only contagious when maintained. The danger of the moral weakling, as the Stoics would perceive them, is that they normalize compromise. When you spend time with someone who justifies dishonesty, cowardice, or betrayal, you begin to recalibrate your own standards. Virtue is not measured by grand acts alone, but by repeated small choices. When those around you consistently lower the bar, your own sense of right and wrong is subtly influenced. Seneca warned that integrity is contagious. Conversely, weakness is contagious. Character can be strengthened by proximity to virtue or eroded by repeated exposure to moral compromise. The Stoics believed that one must protect the mind as one protects a citadel. Once the foundations are undermined, all else becomes vulnerable. This archetype does not destabilize with chaos, nor drain energy with endless complaint, nor spread reactivity through fear or drama. Instead, they corrode silently, teaching others that convenience is preferable to principle. They teach that self-interest outweighs truth, that comfort outweighs courage. And when these lessons are absorbed, they quietly erode resolve, discipline, and your dignity. To remain stoic in the presence of this type requires vigilance and discernment. It demands observing behavior, not words. It demands measuring consistency over charisma and action over rhetoric. The Stoics practiced this in their relationships and counsels. They gave their attention to those whose virtue was evident in repeated acts, not mere claims. Distance, even if uncomfortable, becomes an act of self-preservation. The Stoics also emphasized that avoiding such people is not a condemnation of their humanity. It is an acknowledgement of the natural limitations of influence. You cannot teach virtue by proximity alone. You cannot absorb integrity from those who do not consistently act with it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that his own discipline required careful selection of companions, reminding himself that the mind is shaped by what it observes, rehearses, and tolerates. Across all four archetypes, the chaos merchant, the victim thinker, the emotional parasite, and the moral weakling, the lesson is clear. Your mind is your most valuable possession, and not everyone deserves access to it. Stoicism teaches that clarity, discipline, and moral integrity cannot coexist with prolonged exposure to those who erode them, even subtly. The choice of company is as important as the choice of action. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew intuitively. Influence is contagious, emotional patterns spread, moral compromises ripple outward. The people closest to you become mirrors, teachers, and molds for your behavior. What you tolerate in others, you tolerate in yourself. What you observe repeatedly, your mind rehearses, and your character slowly reshapes. The 5 archetype is the status drunk. This is someone intoxicated by hierarchy, approval, and comparison. Their sense of worth is borrowed, not built. They measure themselves and others by titles, popularity, visibility, and external markers of success. Conversation with them is rarely about truth or virtue, but about who is winning, who is losing, and where everyone stands in the invisible pecking order. Marcus Aurelius lived at the very peak of social status, yet he treated it as something dangerous rather than desirable. He warned himself constantly not to be corrupted by rank or applause. Do not be overheard complaining, even to yourself, he wrote, recognizing that ego feeds on comparison and erodes inner independence. To the Stoics, status was a tool at best, a trap at worst. Psychologically, the status drunk is driven by external validation. Modern research links this mindset to increased anxiety, envy, and identity instability. When self-worth depends on comparison, peace becomes impossible. There is always someone above, someone below, someone watching. The nervous system never rests. The danger of prolonged exposure to the status drunk is subtle. You begin to measure yourself against metrics that don't matter. You feel pressure to perform rather than to act virtuously. Your attention shifts from character to appearance. The Stoics believed this was one of the fastest ways to lose freedom, because the person who needs approval is easily controlled. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to resist this pull daily. He reminded himself that emperors before him were already forgotten, their statues dust, their names echoes. How many after being celebrated have been buried, and how many after being buried have been forgotten. The lesson was not nihilism, but liberation. The Stoic response to the status drunk is indifference, not hostility. You do not compete in games that don't reward virtue. You do not adopt standards that weaken your soul. You remain rooted in self-respect rather than public recognition. When status loses its power over you, those intoxicated by it lose their influence as well. The final archetype is the moral exhibitionist. In person, they appear principled, enlightened, and righteous. But their morality exists to be seen, not lived. They signal virtue loudly while practicing it selectively. Their opinions are polished for public display, yet rarely tested by personal sacrifice. They do not seek truth. They seek recognition for appearing virtuous. The Stoics had little patience for this archetype. Epictetus warned against performing philosophy instead of practicing it. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. To the Stoics, virtue was quiet, consistent, and private. Anything done for applause was immediately suspect. Modern psychology would describe the moral exhibitionist as driven by social reinforcement. Public moral signaling activates the same reward circuits as praise or popularity. Over time, this conditions the individual to prioritize appearing good over actually being good. integrity becomes flexible. Principles are applied where convenient and abandoned where costly. Marcus Aurelius encountered this constantly in Roman politics. Senators spoke eloquently of justice while plotting self-interest behind closed doors. Rather than becoming cynical, Marcus turned inward. He resolved to become the counterexample. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Not as performance, but as discipline. The danger of the moral exhibitionist is that they distort moral clarity. They turn ethics into theater. When surrounded by them, you may feel pressured to conform publicly rather than act rightly privately. The Stoics warned that once morality becomes performative, hypocrisy multiplies and trust collapses. The Stoic response is silence and consistency. You do not announce your values, you live them. You do not argue with those seeking applause, you withdraw your attention. Marcus Aurelius believed that real virtue requires no audience. It leaves no trail of noise behind it. By refusing to participate in moral exhibition, you preserve something rare, integrity without dependence. And in doing so, you remain free from those who use righteousness as a costume rather than a commitment. Therefore, the Stoics practiced careful discernment. They engaged where it was meaningful, withdrew where influence was corrosive, and cultivated relationships that encouraged growth, courage, and reason. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, associate with people who are likely to improve you, not those who entertain you, not those who excite you, but those whose presence strengthens your mind and soul. And so, the ultimate lesson emerges. You cannot control the actions of others, but you can control the boundaries of your attention, your emotional energy, and your moral exposure. To walk among people without being shaped by their weaknesses requires awareness, courage, and discipline, the very virtues the Stoics held above all. Choose your company with care, not out of judgment, but out of reverence for the life you are building within yourself. Protect your inner citadel, guard your mind, cultivate virtue in yourself, and let the world reveal itself in its own time, without granting it undue authority over your calm, your discipline, or your soul. By practicing this, you are not withdrawing from humanity. You are engaging with it from a place of strength. You are mastering yourself rather than being mastered by the habits, weaknesses, or chaos of others. You are living Stoicism in its highest form, calm, reasoned, and unshakable, even when surrounded by the complexities and frailties of the human world. If this resonated, like the video and subscribe, not for noise, but for clarity. Train your algorithm the same way you train your mind.